for your mercies. Thank you for your goodness. Indeed, Lord, we acknowledge that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And we realize and recognize this morning as a nation, we mourn our departed president, that for members of the press, so that you have this understanding of our media structure that we have under the presidential campaign team, which outside the campaign period.
Before we proceed, allow me to ask that we all be upstanding to observe a moment of silence in honor of our 60th Republican President, President Dr. Edgar Chagwa. Peace. Amen. It is said in many of our cultures, I wish to recognize, to the effect that ubusuma bwamfwa kushika. That is Bemba, ubusuma bwamfwa kushika. It means opens the door to the real mourning. Because when we bury, people go away, the drama stops. And the family, the relations of our deceased brother or sister remain on their own. Sometimes still with a few people around. That is when the real mourning starts. So we believe that the real mourning for the family of President Lungu is yet to come. It will be that time when Madam Esther Lungu will never hear that ringtone she has assigned, or she assigned to the number of her husband. That ringtone that made her jump to grab the phone because the husband was calling. She will no longer hear that ringtone. The real mourning will come for the children. When that man, that jovial man who used to call them to find out how they were doing, will no longer call. The real mourning for the Lungu family will come when the little grandchildren will be demanding to know where grandpa has gone and why it's taking too long to come back. So there is a death at stake, and this is reality. And we are all going to die. Having given that background, as UPND Presidential Support System, the entire UPND fraternity, and of course, speaking for many Zambians, we urge the family of President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, senior members of the Patriotic Front, to do the right thing so that President Lungu's mortal remains can be brought back to Zambia, the country he loved, the country that he led as president, the highest office in the land for 7 years, the country where you find people that truly love him, people that worked with him, the family where, the country where his family resides. We urge members of the family of President Lungu to heed the message of many traditional and religious leaders who are echoing the same message. The latest, as you all know, the Catholic Archbishop of Kasama, who happens to be the president of the Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops, Archbishop Ignatius Chama, who in a passionate sermon yesterday delivered on Lutanda Radio in Kasama, pleaded with the nation, pleaded with the family to cooperate with government so that this impasse can be resolved as quickly as possible. We need closure. The family need to be allowed to mourn properly. And as I said at the beginning, that will only happen after the burial. I was almost saying at the beginning of this conference that in case I become overcome by emotion, I will just depart. I will just leave because I don't want to break down in front of cameras and create a drama that will look like it was rehearsed. So I pray that that will not happen. I say so because of how closely, as many of you would know, I worked with President Edgar Chagwa. And we as Zambians should know that beyond the image of every president, there is an ordinary human being. President Lungu, as an ordinary human being, had friends from everywhere. Friends even in the UPND. Friends that he left in the UPND, having been a member, one of the early members. Inonge Wina, our former vice president, Namwangas, all got this wisdom. In Bemba they say, Ulelila tawamucheva kukanwa. The wisdom that when people are grieving, when people are mourning a loved one, we should not scrutinize what they say. They are likely to make mistakes in what they say and of course what they do. That wisdom cannot be doubted. It's a wisdom that we all accept as Zambians. But we want to say that that wisdom, those sayings in our languages, were never meant to be a license to cause confusion at a funeral or indeed during a funeral. We are all Zambians here. And we go to funerals. You will agree with me that when I appear at a funeral, and the first thing that we do as per tradition is to go in the house. Humble yourself, mourn in whichever way you want to mourn. Now imagine Frank Bwalya getting in the house to mourn, and somebody in the corner begins to say, Indo Shiaisa, the one who has killed our relative, has arrived. You will agree with me that the elders at that funeral, and everyone around would not accept such a thing. We have seen it happening in our families. Such people are grabbed and thrown out. Sometimes they are beaten. We are not encouraging any beating, but just talking about what happens in our lives. Such people sometimes are beaten for a simple reason that such sentiments at a funeral create havoc. They create confusion. And instead of helping people to mourn, they distract people from doing the very thing that they have come to do at the funeral house. Some of the cases that we follow in the courts of law emanate from such situations, where my uncle takes a relative to court because they were accused of witchcraft. These things are common. So as UPND, we want to say to all the people who are saying that whatever is coming from the Patriotic Front, or indeed any citizen and leaders of the opposition, should be ignored because people are mourning. We think that is not the rationale of the wisdom of not scrutinizing what those who mourn say. We urge those who are calling for such behavior, confusion in the country, that the wisdom of those sayings I referred to in our tribes, in our languages, are not a license. They are not meant to give cantankerous people a field day to create confusion and to break the law. It is therefore necessary for all of us to be bold enough and by millions of Zambians that some people within the Patriotic Front and the opposition are trying to exploit the death of President Edgar Chagwa to decampaign President Hakainde Hichilema. As simple as that. That's the motive. In leadership and ensuring that sanity prevails as we mourn President Lungu. The priest from the east, showing rare wisdom from that part of our country, has demanded that we respect President Lungu even in death and mourn him in a dignified manner. I also wish to add to that list a lawyer by the name of Isaac Simbeye, who in our view is one of and the people of Zambia. Many of you came across traveling to South Africa to join the family because their passports were... Again, the idea is very clear. The idea is very clear. Somebody out there is saying, HH President Edgar Chagwa, but they are also praying for the man to whom he handed over state power, President Hakainde Hichilema, who we all know is in a very, very awkward position. Not because of his own making, not because of anything that he has done personally. No. So this lawyer refused. He said, my clients have not applied for the release of their passports. And that's how the wise say those people are lying. Sometimes wise people will not tell you you are lying, they will simply set the record straight. And people will conclude you lied. That was a lie. Meant to decampaign President Hakainde Hichilema ahead of 2026. The biggest scandal we have witnessed as a country. The latest, along the same lines, was a statement by Bamayo, by Professor Nkanduluo. I've added Bamayo, by Professor Nkanduluo, to the effect that even as the family of President Lungu, his children, are mourning him, the Drug Enforcement Commission has had the audacity to summon his son for interrogations. Again, the motive is clear. This man is so bad. He doesn't deserve to be president. You shouldn't vote for him next year because look at what he's doing. The idea is to whip up hatred. The idea is to decampaign President HH. At a time when they know very well that he can never come out and defend himself. During a national calamity, tragedy, where they know very well that the president is mourning and he cannot jump into the mud, not only because of the mourning, but because it's not his character in the first place. Many Zambians have seen what happened even when President HH was in the opposition. Some high-profile leaders would join the UPND, become very close to him. In no time they would leave, start insulting him. Can anyone tell me any occasion when you saw what we are seeing in America happening between HH and somebody who left the UPND that time, or indeed this time? It's not his character. It's not his character. The character of HH is what has happened to me. A person who called him useless. And I stand here as a member of the UPND, forgiven, given a chance to grow, given a chance to contribute. That's who HH is. And Zambians are seeing that indeed HH represents the kind of leadership this country requires to move forward. The kind of leadership this country requires to develop. Sober leadership. When he was blocked by the courts of law, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Not over his death. Even before President Lungu died, senior government officials kept guiding the nation to stop exploiting his name, even in sickness. They advised to allow him to rest as he recovered, as he was being treated in South Africa, as we were all informed. We therefore call upon all Zambians to condemn the malice, the propaganda, the hatred that we are seeing. We demand that the PF leadership condemn the tribal remarks that have been made during this funeral. You all know what we are talking about. And we urge law enforcement agencies to be vigilant. Because as we said, does not mean people are free to create confusion, to break the law in this country. So it is our hope that when the funeral is over, people like our brother, the PF Secretary General, Mr. Raphael Nakachinda, and others will be summoned to make a statement about some of the things they have said. Top on that list, the poisoning issue. Many of us believe that that poisoning story was meant to poison the minds of gullible Zambians to rise against an innocent man, President HH and his government. Law enforcement agencies should be vigilant. And no one should hide behind any wisdom to the effect that you shouldn't pay attention to what those who mourn say. When they break the law, they should be arrested. Even in our families, when you assault a member of the family at the funeral, sometimes these matters go to the police. Some people end up in jail. We have seen comments and we're very disappointed. Zambians are very disappointed with some of the postings and of course comments that we have seen on social media, even about procedures that are standard. Procedures that are standard. We all know that a former president in this country, or indeed a president, that is if he dies in office, is not buried in the ordinary manner that many of us will be buried, or our brothers and sisters are buried, where you just dig a grave. You could do it in the morning. By 12 or 14 hours, the body arrives and you bury your loved one. The president is not buried like that. The preparation of the burial site is done differently. So you don't expect that the burial site will be prepared in the morning and the burial is in the afternoon. Arrangements are done. This is standard procedure. It's not HH who has given instructions to say, quickly prepare the grave for this man. No. It's the law. That's what we have all agreed as Zambians. It's not different from the issue of foregoing your entitlement, your retirement benefits, when, as former president, you opt to get back into active politics. It's not HH. I don't have the permission, but I don't think Dr. VJ Venon Mwanga would take offense if I shared this. We had the privilege to visit him this week. I think it was on Monday, if I'm not mistaken. And he recounted to us how he, then I think as foreign minister, under Dr. Chiruba, went to Dr. Kaunda and said to him, you are no longer president, how are you going to live? This is somebody who worked with Dr. Kaunda, but was part of a team that removed Dr. Kaunda, and you all know that that election was not an easy one. There was a lot of animosity. So he goes to the former president and he says, how are you going to leave? Dr. Mwanga told us that that was the genesis of the law that we have today, providing for the benefits, the retirement benefits of a former president. And he went to other countries to look at what they had, and he said to us, ours, in fact, our law is even a little more ambitious, a little more generous. So it's not HH that has created this law. And it was not HH who said, can you make sure that this happens? The law automatically kicks in once somebody voluntarily, as we were informed by PF themselves, that one thing we need to celebrate, they told us, about President Edgar Lungu, was that he chose to forego the comfort, the benefits that come with being a retired, a former president, to come back into active politics to save their party and other motives. It was PF themselves. The same day, in the same speech, when they were announcing or confirming his death to the country. So it's a scandal that people like Mbuya, Sean Kembo, can be making those scandalous, malicious statements of the highest degree, like never seen before in this country. Saying that, I shouldn't repeat this. I almost repeated it. But you all know what Sean Kembo put on his Facebook page. Implying that President HH should be the one to sleep in that grave. You all know these things. This is not only un-Zambian, not un-Christian only, but inhuman. How did we get here? We agree, of course not exactly in the same vein, with the former Secretary General of the Patriotic Front, Mr. Davis Mwila, who has called upon the church to help them reconcile and to reconcile the country after the funeral of President Lungu. This country needs healing. The hatred is too much. And we have created for ourselves, all of us, an embarrassment that could have been avoided. And we are saying things that are even making it worse in full view of the international community. And it is a shame. In conclusion, we continue to urge members of the family of President Lungu, senior members of the Patriotic Front, to heed the voice of Zambians, including notable Zambians, traditional leaders, religious leaders, and children who are calling for an amicable solution, expedient agreement to bring back the remains of our 6th Republican president, be given a befitting farewell with all the honors, even as Commander-in-Chief, former Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Something that President Hakainde Hichilema and his government have committed to. and we commend them for that. We also continue to call for calm in terms of our own members. The guidance is very clear from the Office of the Secretary General and the other senior UPND and government officials to mourn our 60th Republican President in a dignified manner and to avoid politics this time around. I thank you. Maybe we can take questions specific. We can take questions that relate to the subject at hand. Mr. Chileshi, I'm sure we will manage this.
Ladies and gentlemen, who allow our senior citizen who is mourning with us also to just say a few remarks. I now call upon our father.
Thank you very much, Father Bwalya. I'd like to thank you very much for the kind words you've been talking and the guidance that you've been giving us. I think it's very important that we echo Father Bwalya's sentiments to the people of this country. I'm speaking to you today, not as a member of UPND, not as whatever the case you may want to call me, but I want to say to you that my age will tell you that I have noticed a very big difference between the young people of today and the elderly people. The thing that I have experienced is today I'm an old person, but I remember when I was young. And the young can never ever imagine what I go through at my age until you arrive at a particular age of mine. For me, I see that the situation politically today is being manipulated because some people have failed to come up with solutions to some of our problems in this country. We have witnessed a group of people trying to undermine this particular government. And I want you to be assured that, as you all know, I was part and parcel of nearly every government that was in power. Today, as I stand before you, I have one thing that I must say. This government of UPND has been the best government that the people of this country could ever have. At least I've seen for once in my lifetime a foundation, a very strong foundation, has been built for the people of this country, upon which many issues can come about, whether it is political development, whether it is economic or social development. All of these particular issues can come up. Whereas in the past, believe me, I know what I'm talking about. There was no such a thing as a foundation for the people of this country. Today we have a foundation. Let us not allow anybody, but anybody, to come and disturb that particular foundation and put us back to where we've come from. We must march forward. Our simple issue is message from an activist, from an elderly person speaking to you today, is that I urge the people of this country, let's move forward. We cannot continue where we are or move backwards. We can't. For the sake of your children, one day all of you will be a great-grandfather like I am today. You'll be a great-grandmother. What are you going to say to those children when they have nothing that you left behind for them? So I urge you all, let us take this opportunity, this particular opportunity, whether you like HH or not, the fact is we must agree the foundation is there. And there are many, many, many developments, I'm not going to even go about it, that HH has brought today. So I thank you very much, Father Bwalya. Thank you very much for giving me the pleasure of talking to you. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, those that have got questions, I would have loved that you come forward and ask your question from here. But if it's not possible for you to navigate through to come here, you can ask your question from where you are. Maybe I may start with my colleague here. Kindly introduce yourself, your name and the institution you are representing.
Okay, my name is Bwalya from Zambia Daily Mail. Yes, there have been repeated calls for unity over the last 7 days. And yet up until where we are now, we almost still have a deadlock in how the situation is. What do you think is lacking? What do you think is lacking at the moment for us to move forward? Because I'm addressing the
Thank you. Yes, I can see a hand there.
My name is Hakainde from Speaka Radio. So I'd just like you to shed a bit more light on the statement you made that the president currently is in an awkward position. Does this extend to having the body repatriated into Zambia? What exactly do you mean him being in an awkward position? Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I can see a hand there.
Thank you. Good morning, Father Bwalya.
Good morning.
I'm Hakainde. The latest development from South Africa, in line with what we heard, that government will respect the wishes of the first family. Are you, the party and government, going to accept the latest development that have come from them to say this year they're expecting to have a private burial? Is government willing to accept that?
Maybe I can quickly respond to these three concerns. The first one, what is lacking for us to have unity? We believe as UPND that a lot of progress has been made, even as the government continues to engage the family to resolve the issue of bringing the remains of President Lungu back home. We think that the country has remained united. And we believe that no one will succeed to create a situation where Zambians will start rioting, destroying property, killing one another, and so on. For a simple reason, that this is not the first time that a former president has died. This is not the first time that a former president, the family of a former president who has died, is aggrieved about matters of travel, about matters of benefits, and so on. It's not the first time. When Dr. Kaunda left office, he decided to remain in active politics. The story is known. The story is known concerning Mr. Rupia Bwezanbanda. In 2015, that was 2015, the election of 2016 after the death of President Michael Chilupya-Sata, we all know the courts ruled that he could not stand, that is RB. And I think it was Dr. Nevas Mumba who the court said was the rightful candidate for the MMG. We all know this story. So those who are trying to create anarchy, those who are trying to poison the minds of Zambians will not succeed. Above all, we are a Christian nation. And we know many, many people are praying for the stability, for the peace that we have been known for. It is our prayer that sooner than later, the family will heed the message of those traditional and religious leaders we're talking about, that there can be a compromise and the needful can be done so that President Lungu can be mourned, can be buried here in Zambia in a dignified manner. Allow me to take advantage of this question and say something that maybe I should have said in my main statement. That if, and I want to speak slowly, if President Edgar Chagwa left instructions about his funeral and things like burial, which are consistent with the way PF and family members have behaved, then the family has failed him in a manner that should be regrettable. Then the family and members of the Patriotic Front have actually put a huge dent on the legacy of President Edgar Chagwa. Because when a leader, a big person, talking about the president, a pope, a traditional leader, leaves instructions that would be against the law, that will create confusion, you protect them by doing the right thing. And your conscience will be clear, especially on matters such as we are dealing with as a country. So if what they are doing is what President Lungu said should happen, then they have failed him. Then they have failed him in a manner that they will live to regret. Because it's a huge dent on his legacy and on his persona. When we look at the people that worked with President Lungu, some of them who insulted him and he took back and worked with, many of us don't believe that in his right mind he could have left instructions that would be divisive. In his right mind. Of course, when somebody is ill, when somebody is a politician, and they have gone through what many politicians go through, such as what HH went through, and we all know, attempts on his life, being sent to jail for 127 days, all these things. 127 days. All these things, it may be understood for a human being, weak as we all are, to say things that really doesn't come from the bottom of their heart. And as I said, it's the duty of the family to protect his legacy. Unasked what we meant by saying President HH is in an awkward position. It's that awkward position of a widow who did everything possible to nurse a husband, but still dies from nothing in the manner they want him to speak. But if he did, please allow me to underscore that he wouldn't. That's not who he is. But if he did, they would be celebrating that government, under the wise leadership, the sober leadership of President HH, will not compromise.
Any other questions? Yes,
Good morning. My name is Darius Bwalya from Diamond TV.
Just a minute, my brother, just a minute. Please go ahead. What's your name again?
Darius.
Darius.
Darius. My question is just a follow-up on the family's demands. One of them being that they want the film to be private, well, that's according to the family spokesperson. Are you in a position to tell us to what extent that the government will be able to bend to the dictates of the family? And I'm asking this because there was already a period of national mourning that was already announced by the Secretary to the Cabinet, and it's close to conclude. I think it should be a day or in between as to conclude. Are we seeing a possibility of an extension if up to Saturday or Sunday there's no agreement between the family of the former president and the government?
Okay. Any last question? There have been none. DG can respond to the two questions that have come.
So let me respond to the last question, which is the last question. We do not speak on behalf of government. We publicize what government has said, and government is the people of Zambia. So the question should actually be turned, and Zambians asked, will they allow a man that governed them, a man that they elected to occupy the highest office in our land, a man who is, so to speak, state property, meaning it belongs to us, to be mourned in a private manner. What Zambians have been saying, and the government is us, you and me. What Zambians have been saying is that they want to mourn their leader, their former president. We may see, maybe, a compromise, and it may not even be a compromise per se, but a situation where more time, maybe, can be given to the family to do certain things that they may not adequately execute within the official program. But that is up to government and the family to discuss. What Zambians are saying is that we are mourning and we are waiting for the body. And Musuma Wamfwa Kushika, we want to be there. If it means watching on TV only because we can't travel, we want to do that. He was president. Some of the people who got social cash transfer did so from the time he was president, and they have continued to do that. And they are saying, I was put on the list for the first time by Edgar Lungu, and HH increased it. And my neighbor was also included when HH became president. People are seeing that continuity and celebrating it. And that's why we are sure that Zambians are not just praying for the repose of the soul of President Edgar Lungu, but also for President HH, the man to whom he peacefully handed over power. The man who has continued many of the good programs that were started by the MMG, maybe even by UNIP, escalated by the PF, and brought to even a higher level under the leadership of President HH. That is our prayer. But we will listen when government has to say something on this matter. Is it logical? Is it logical When we get into issues of what is logical and what is that, the current government, President HH, never withdrew people. Because the Constitution says we the people. All laws that flow from that supreme land of the law, a simple person like Frank Bwalya, who dies and his death, of course, may be mourned by people who knew him and so on, but his family can do what they want and you forget. No! We're talking about the former head of state. Yeah. Former head of state. So what happened to all who have died? Now, that's what the law says. Addiction